Presentation is about rates and prices and should you buy now. Okay, so since about early 2020, when COVID started, there was a trend where rates just dropped to the lowest of all time. And in exchange, prices just kept going up at a phenomenal rate because people could get a significantly priced house with a low monthly payment. And that trend just kept going and going and going until about spring 2022. And in spring 2022, rates started going up. But in the beginning, prices didn't go down. They stayed the same. And this concept I want to go over of the delay in the market. There's a delay in the market between like the emotion and the logic, I would say. And emotionally, people just wanted to get houses, even though logically rates were going up and prices were not yet going down. Over a period of time, people started to realize that, hey, maybe it's not worth it to pay the same price when the rate is 2 to 3% higher. So prices started dropping. And I'll give you an example of this. So here's a house in Denver. In July, it was listed at late July. It was listed at $449,000. And like I was saying, the trend, people started to realize, hey, the rates are much higher. Why would I pay the same price? And houses are just going down, down, down in value right now. Or you can get a deal, essentially. So this house went from $449, it's currently $380. And so there's a great opportunity, and I'll explain why. So how do we take advantage of this shifting housing market? Because we already know that with higher rates, we have higher monthly payments. And the way we do this is with seller concessions. What are seller concessions? They're incentives given by the seller. And I'll give you an example. We'll go back to this house again. So it was listed at $449,000. And it keeps dropping in price. And remember, the reason why it's dropping in price is because the interest rates are higher and people perceive, or the monthly payment is higher, so people don't want the monthly out-of-payment cost. But I'll show you how you can work this to your advantage. Okay, so let's say right now the price is at $387. If you were to say, Mr. Seller, and I'm not saying that the seller will take this situation, I'm just giving it as an example that has worked for other people. Your price is at $380. How about if I offer you $387,000 and in exchange you pay $7,000 of my closing cost? So I'm saving $7,000 out of pocket. Okay, so I'm going to give an example of how this works in how you can. The problem people have is they don't want to pay the monthly cost of the higher rate. And there's a way we solve this using seller concessions. So in this comparison, we have property 1, which is the same property, Clay Street, at $449,000 when rates were lower. We have property 2, which is the same property, but we're counting it at $387,000, but at a higher rate. So property 1, or just named property, is at 5% rate. Property 2 is at 7% rate. And I'll show you how this works out. So again, the reason why prices are dropping is because the monthly payment is higher at the higher interest rate. And we can see this here, where property 1, even though the price is $60,000, $70,000 higher, the total payment is actually less. So you can see $2,815 versus $2,937. And you can see that is because of the increased interest rate. But when you look at the total out-of-pocket cost. So again, when you're looking at the monthly payment, some people forget. So when you close a house, you have closing cost that comes out of your pocket. And you also have the monthly payment. So when comparing these two situations, number one was Clay Street when it was at the higher price. And I'm just giving a rough example or a rough estimate. Let's say the closing costs were $7,000. And in option 2, like I was saying before, if it's listed at $380 and we said, hey, Mr. Seller, we'll offer you $387, but I want you to pay my closing cost. So I have zero out of pocket for closing. So out of pocket, I'm saving $7,000 even though the rate is higher. Now, if I applied that savings of $7,000 to the monthly payment, so even though the monthly payment is lower at the lower interest rate, I have an extra $7,000 to supplement the payment every month. So it takes roughly, so in this chart it's comparing how much time it takes to be ahead in out-of-pocket cost. So roughly at 18 months, you start to break even as the first situation with a higher price that your out-of-pocket cost is lower. But here's the key, that in this time frame, within 2 years, rates will drop. And as we know before, once rates start dropping, the price goes back up. The $7,000 we saved here in closing costs from seller concessions supplemented our out-of-pocket cost up until here. In that time, rates will have dropped. Basically, there's a correlation between inflation and rate. Once inflation gets under control, which we anticipate to happen in less than 2 years, rates will go back down. And let's say, so we're going back up to these 3 comparisons. And I only first talked about the first 2, as number 1 was the price at $449 at a 5% interest rate. Number 2 is at $387 with a 7% interest rate, but we're getting 7,000 concessions. That helps our out-of-pocket cost. We can use that savings to supplement the payment every month. And we have less out-of-pocket cost for 18 months, and we break even. In that time, we can refinance. So situation number 3 is the same house, but we can refinance back to 5% where we were here. And now, when you look at the monthly payment, it's $24.30. Not only is your monthly payment much lower, the amount you owe is much lower because you got the house for so much less. Again, when we look at the, when we look at the price, instead of paying $449, we're paying $387. The penalty we have is a higher rate. We supplement or we mitigate that higher rate by getting seller concessions to cover closing costs. We use that closing cost savings to supplement the payment until we refinance. And in this process, we've gotten the house for less money. Our out-of-pocket cost is the same. We end up saving a substantial amount of money. Now, what most people are going to do is they're going to wait for rates to go back down. And when they do, the prices will start going back up. But a key part of this to keep in mind that I talked about before, there's a lag in the market. rates are going to start getting lower very soon. So there's a limited window before the people realize basically the herd is behind everyone else. And once rates start going, if the trends continue, we have a window where there's still a buying opportunity. So we're near, in my opinion, we're near the lowest of the price. This is where the opportunity is. I hope that all makes sense. Seller concessions can come in many forms. It all is about limiting out-of-pocket costs to take advantage of lower prices with higher rates. I can go in a lot more detail about there's other options besides just paying closing costs, such as 2-1 buy downs. They're all just basically the same concept is you want to limit out-of-pocket cost to get the house with the least cost so that you can refinance it later.